YouTube. Save changes. And we're going live for Facebook. All right, YouTube peeps, I'm sorry that I had to cut out. I can't fix in our camera management system, I can't fix frozen cameras unless it's not connected, and I thought that was all set up. So let's see, what is your live video about? So I'm setting up Facebook again. Save. Save. Let's see. So now we can going live today at 1 p.m. Oh, connect streaming software. It says that's connected. Okay, now we got it all going. Okay. Okay, we're back on Facebook. All right. Sorry about that, everyone, but if I get a frozen camera, I explained this to our YouTube crew, if I get a frozen camera, I have to shut it down and then I can fix it again. So I have lots of people. Let's see. Now I need to go back and change to my new live stream. Okay, I see Judy now. She's in the picture. Okay, Patty Heron says that is better. Good. At least we can see Judy, and that's very important if she's gonna do a training video. Okay, so we're gonna show you for a couple minutes and let some people log on here our boxes. So I'm gonna come over here. So the first thing I want to show you, let me go around this side, is the Quiltworx boxes. So we are so excited about this, and maybe what I need to do, Mom, is explain it and have you show it, and that way I can switch to like this view so people can look up and down. So I'm gonna let her do that. I come back over here, and then we're gonna switch to this view. Okay, so close the box, Mom. So
close it?
Yeah, so they can see how pretty it is. The boxes are so amazing. I'm so excited about this. So we are doing our first ever subscription box. And if you aren't aware of the program, the way this works is it's a quarterly shipment. And there's 2 tracks. One is for a whole series of small projects, and the other is a series of, and the others is to make a big quilt, and then you make each portion of that quilt in 4 different quarters. So we are going to show you what's in them. So we're going to do a little box opening. So this is our first box that's going to go out for our big project. So, okay, now you can open it, Mom. Time for the big reveal. So that's what the box looks like when it comes in the mail. It'll have a mailing label on it, but they're so pretty. They're so cute. Okay, so inside, for this first box, right now I have a little magazine in there that says Fall Catalog. That's actually going to say Get to Know Us, and it's going to be a booklet. It's not going to have pictures of quilts in it, but it is going to have a lot of like promotions and coupons and different things from not only Quiltworx, but from our certified instructors and certified shops. That alone makes the box worth it. The other thing that will be in there is a code for you to get 3 months free of Quiltster. And then a 25% off coupon to buy 1 pattern from Quiltworx, and also a 25% off coupon to buy 1 kit off of the Quiltster marketplace. So if you have ordered all 4 boxes, the other thing that you're going to, so you would ordered 1 from each quarter, then you qualified for a free strip set. So that's what the strip sets look like, and those are the ones that will be in the box. Some of you may end up getting your strips.
That's what they look like in real life.
Yeah,
too.
that's the opened up package. So you'll be getting the strips either in your first or maybe second boxes. We're still waiting for some of the shipment to come in, and I think it'll be here in time for the second boxes. But if you ordered all 4 and you don't get them in your first box, it's because we ran out and we have an order for the rest of them coming. Let's see. Then we have 2 little Notion gifts, and in our first box, oh, actually, I made a mistake. That glue, the repositionable glue, is going to be a Yoo-hoo glue stick.
Oh.
So it's the
Yoo-hoo.
Yeah, it's not going to be the Scotch repositionable glue. That will come in one of the boxes coming up, but they're currently out, so we couldn't get them in time for the first box. So we're going to do a Yoo-hoo glue stick and then your Fawns and Porter's glue stick, because those are things that we use a lot of in Quiltworx patterns. Then you're going to get a little project that's called a Stash Buster. And the Stash Buster, we're actually, for the first box, including all of the fabrics to make the Stash Buster. There will be some promotional packets coming from from fabric companies in future boxes. They may or may not go with your Stash Buster, but you'll still get the little Stash Buster pattern. But for the first one, you're actually going to get the fabrics, and that one has enough to make the pattern that's in there. And you could actually pull the instructions out and show them what the pattern is. So we're still putting the finishing touches on this little pattern, but so it's the one on the back, Mom. Oh. So it's the table runner one on the back. There you go. So if you buy if you buy a charm element, which includes more of that same block, you could make the one that's the little project, the little wall hanging or square project that I think says 40 inches or whatever. But the little table runner is what there will be enough in the box for you to make.
Don't you have some pictures of some of them too?
On Quiltster I do. I could switch over to Quiltster really quick and show you what they look like. Hold on, let me pull up my Quiltster view here. And I'll show you what they look like. They are really adorable. Let's see. My projects. I'm not sure if this is, I might have to open up a little bit different viewer, Mom, because this one doesn't narrow it down just to my projects. Hold on, let's see if I can figure it out. Yep, there we go. Okay. Hold on just a second and I'll pull one up. These are so adorable and they're super easy to make. So here's one of them. Print view. So there will be 2 or 3 different colors, and it's not something that you guys get to pick, but in this case, this is one of the colorways that we'll be putting into the box. So just a cute little, they're 12 inches by 36 inches, and just a fun little project to make. So it's actually called Haystack Cookies. And we are actually going to have Haystack Cookies available as its own little project beginning, I don't know, in a couple months. It takes us a little bit to get some things published, but that's what your little fabric bundle and your pattern is going to be. And then, of course, there's the first booklet of your pattern. So this is, the first one is going to be Tuscan Sunset, and you're going to make the center. So you can kind of show them what the center block is, the little feathered star in that center. So that's the first quarter box. And it includes, this kit includes all the instructions and then all the fabrics. Some of you ordered your kits pre-cut, which means we've cut them into strips. Others have it cut and then they'll be labeled, although I think that's our draft and we didn't label that one. But regardless, it'll have some labels on it. So it's going to look just like that. And that's everything that's going to be in our first box. So
and don't I do a video on try?
Yes.
Be doing video
so the other cool thing about the box is that Judy will be doing a class video on it for the whole time. So I know there might be a lot of questions for those of you who haven't seen this before, but someone already said, are the boxes available on Quiltster? So they are on their own website, and it's called box.quiltworx.com, and I'll put it in the comments here for all of you. And you can read more about them there. You can also join our oh, that didn't work out as well on YouTube. But on the YouTube, the link is box.quiltworx.com. We also have a Quiltworx Box Club that's on, what's on Facebook. So go join the Quiltworx Box Club and you'll also learn more about it there. And then we have, and yes, there's definitely still time to join. You can find those, or you can join, or we still have boxes left for everything. We are very, very low on the Sage and Heather large box. I think we only have a couple of those left. I need to go look at that. Again, on the others, we have our large boxes for the others. We have somewhere between 5 and 10 left of each of the colorways. And then on the small boxes, we have quite a bit left. So we can cut those for a little bit longer. Remember, you have to do all 4 quarters in order to get a strip set. Otherwise, you just get the boxes and you wouldn't get the strip set. And every single box comes with 3 months of Quiltster. So I love, love, love that. So there's a lot of really, really fun things that are going to happen with it. And honestly, just the promotional stuff alone, I think is amazing. So, okay, we're gonna switch back to I'm gonna transition back here. So we thought since we had showed you the strip set, it would be really fun to show you a quilt that we got just yesterday in the mail. So this is called the Diamond Wedding Star, and we've had it around for a while, but we're gonna re-release it in this rainbow theme look, and that pattern will be coming out in a couple weeks. But we thought we'd just show it off to you. It was made by Carrie McGee, and she is with our certified shops. She has 2 actually, Going Batty and Stitches and Crumbs. And she is actually going to do a video also on this. So if you want to sign up for a class and learn to make this quilt, this is an amazing opportunity to do so. The video isn't free, but it is going to be very thorough, and she'll cover this diamond wedding star technique. It's also very similar to what we use in the wedding star techniques. And come on, Mav. Maverick's in here. He's thinking he might want to help. So anyway, but you can kind of see those are the bottom blocks and these are the top blocks. So we thought we'd show this off to you. And this is our current strip set. This design takes one strip set.
That's the strip sets.
Right.
That's the ones that are in the box.
And that's the one that's in the box. So if you subscribe to all 4 quarters of the box and then you want to actually make that quilt, you would have all of the strips that are required for the rings. So, all right. So with that, I think we're running just a little bit behind, but I thought it was important that we go over all of that. And we are ready to get started with class. So it looks like we have a good group of people on both pages now. And tell all your friends about the box too. We are pretty excited about it, and we just want to see all of the opportunities that are there get out to everyone, because the promotions are great, the boxes are great, the patterns are fun. You can do small ones or you can do the one big project. There's lots of colorways to choose from, so should be good.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to shut my mic off so it doesn't interfere.
Are we ready? Yeah. Okay. So today we are going to go over all of the information that we need to make the queen size. And over the weekend we did publish the cutting video for the queen. So for those of you that want to watch how I sorted everything, that is out on video now, so you can follow it through, and we went through all of it with a lot of detail. And so there shouldn't be any problem with any of the cutting information now. So today what I'm going to do is I actually have, let's show them the finished applique quilt on the wall over here.
Okay, hold on.
So we're going to switch a camera, and over the holidays I actually finished up all of the applique, and it actually, I had about 12 hours of sewing the applique on there. Some people really, they're always asking me how long it takes. And I sat down for 3 days for about 4 hours on those 3 days over one of the weekends and finished that up. And now then we're going to switch. Can we do that camera? That one? We might have to wait on this other one.
Harder.
Yeah.
Let's do that one at the end.
Okay. So I have all the parts on the wall that are going to show that we're going to be working on today. And but we've got to move some cameras in order to make that available for you to watch, to look at.
You want me to go over these?
Yeah, I will talk about them. And so we did find a couple corrections that we have to go out. We don't have them posted. I didn't give them to Judelle over the weekend. And one of them I knew about a long time ago and never mentioned it to anybody but myself. And then the other one is a couple things that are mislabeled that I have to go through with you. And we'll go through that when we get to it, because there's no reason to talk about it until I get to that part. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a basket. And so I have my bag here for my basket. And I have all the baskets done other than just one. And I'm actually going to go through and show you guys a couple things on them. I did the one that have the pieced lines in them, so you can see the lines there. And the baskets are fun. And it actually took me about an hour and a half to make all my baskets. They went really fast. Although I didn't finish this last one, so that is kind of cheating. But if you look, we have everything stacked in order. So I have my very last one stacked, so that's my section 5. And then we have a strip. And then we have another section, and that's my 3. And then we have another strip. And then we have section 1. And then at the bottom, we also have 2 more sections. And one of them is section 7, and one of them is section 6. So I'm just going to place both of those underneath there, like that. And I'm going to start the paper piecing really quick on here. So section 1. So let's say you guys are doing a little bit of fussy cutting there. Then what I would do is try to get both your papers up if you have to match, if you set that up to match. If you're not going to match anything, then all you have to do is just put that piece on there. But we gave you enough leeway on both ends of that template to actually make that so that you would be able to match that if you had to have something going across there in straight. So we're going to take our repositionable glue, and we're going to put it right along the edge of the very first one. And just put that on there. And then we're going to take our add a quarter ruler here. And I'm going to do this. We're going to place this on line 1. Fold back. And we're trimmed. So you can see we have quite a bit of excess on that very first piece that's going to allow you to do some fussy cutting if you want to. Then we're going to take the very next piece, which is just a straight piece. They're the same for the left and right units, so just put it on there. And I want to go over, for those of you that are beginners, if you look at this, you may want to cover the whole thing, but you really don't have to. You only have to be about right here. So what I like to do is when I'm teaching somebody new how to do this, I'll actually come in and fold the paper, or I'll make a line, draw a line, so that as I'm doing my paper piecing, I can see exactly how far down to put that. So now I can put my finger on that line, and I can put my finger at the top of the paper, and we're going to go ahead and line that up, and we're going to sew really quick, but I need to rethread my machine. So give me just a second. This was supposed to be done, but I ran out of bobbin thread. Okay. And we'll make sure that my thread's in there. And it is. Okay, so we're going to push this back. We're going to open it up, and we're going to sew on line 1. And remember, you got to adjust your stitch length. And what I'm going to do is sew right down. I don't want to sew past that dashed line on this one. I'm going to sew right to the dashed line that's right below line 5. Okay. So I'm going to point at that again for you. So you want to stop your sewing right at that dashed line that's right by line 5. Okay. Now we're going to go to our iron, and I'm going to put a little bit of starch on there on that seam line, and then we're going to press that open. Okay. Now, when you add these strips, that next line is almost where the dashed line is. They're just a little bit off from each other, but we want to put it on the solid line that's called line 2. And you're going to put your fold template on there and fold back your paper. And what you're going to notice is you may have a little bit of overlap. So if you didn't trim off, you know, if you allowed this other seam to get a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch in the sewing process, it's probably going to stick out. So I do want to show you that if it's looks like it's going to overlap your seam allowance, and just come back and retrim that off. So I just trimmed off about 1/8 of an inch there. So now I have a really tiny, a small seam allowance. And now when I fold this back, I'm not going to have to worry about the double layer of seams inside that little area. It's nice and clean in there. And that is something that I really like doing when I'm working with these little tiny sashing pieces that I put in right on the lines, is I like to clean those, go back and clean those lines, seam allowances down to, I probably go to about 1/8 of an inch when I trim those off. All right, so we're going to take the next piece, put it on the sew side, put it in place, and we're going to sew. Now you'll notice that I'm not doing a lot of gluing on this, and it's because the pieces are small enough that I don't have to glue something that's really tiny, small to work with. I usually save the gluing for when I have a big stack, and right now we just have the one piece that we're working with. We're going to stop at the dashed line, and then we're going to put our starch on the seam allowance there, and then we're going to press. And we're going to place the next one. We're going to trim, straight line, position, and I'm actually going to glue this one just because that long strip is going to have a tendency to want to move just a touch for me. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that so I don't have any threads overlapping. And again, we're going to look at this, and I think I'm going to come back and just clean that off just a touch down here at the bottom. And just skinny up that seam allowance. Fold back on line 4. So you can see that these don't take very long to make. I'm going to grab the next piece. This is for section 5. Gonna make sure that you have fabric up past this edge there, and then we're gonna sew. Okay, so now I'm just gonna quickly clean off this excess around here before I add the bottom pieces. Now I'm gonna take this and we place this on line 5, and we're gonna fold the whole thing back. Now, what you're gonna find here is the difference between the D5 and D6, which is basically a left and a right. It's going to make a difference on how much it tears the paper. So when I pull this back, you didn't notice a lot of the paper, and I want it tearing right here. And so I'm going to, but you had to pull all of it back. So there's four lines there that you had to pull those threads back through. Once I get that back, I can trim that off. Okay. Now I'm going to do that on this other one. I'm going to place it on line 5, and then I'm going to pull this back. Now notice on this one how it tore all the paper, and the only thing I can think it is because of the difference in the way the angle of the threads is facing. So some of them are this way and some are that. But on one side it's like I tore every piece, and the other side just pulled right out for me. So don't worry about it. Just take and put your add a quarter ruler on there and trim those lines off like that. Okay, and now we're going to take our 2 little pieces, find the sew side, and then we're going to put it under there, and then we're going to take this one and we're going to put that sew side under there. There we go. We got both pieces ready to sew. And we're going to take this in. Can they hear, Del? Because he's just watching some video. I'm talking, and we could actually have him turn it down a little bit.
So for those that they probably can't even hear me. So for those of you who, my dad's in the other room and he's watching video and it's loud. Nancy says she doesn't hear background noise, so I think you guys. So I think it's good, Mom.
Can they hear it?
Well, Nancy said she can't. So Nancy's speaking for the masses, and but I don't think they can because they can't hardly even hear me if I don't have my mic on.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
All right. So I have the first 2 pieces on. Now we're going to flip it over and
confirm. No background noise.
Fold this back. Then I won't go yell at him and tell him to turn it off. So then we're going to put this on line 6 on this one. And trim that off. And now we're going to add the last little piece.
There's a question. Jen said, is that the 20C foot you're using?
The what?
On your machine. What foot are you using?
Oh, I use an open toe. It's number 37 from Bernina.
So there you go.
Now we're going to put this one on the next one. So as you can see, it does not take very long to make these little baskets. They're pretty fun. We'll sew the last pieces and then we're going to trim. Now on the one that it tore my paper, I just have to make sure to hold the paper where it needs to be sewn. There we go. Pick another one up. All right. So we're going to press those. I'm going to move all of this garbage off my table. And now we're going to take our ruler, and I'm going to work with my diamond ruler, and I'm going to lay it down on here. And you're going to notice that if you do have the diamond ruler, it lays right down on the edge of that basket. It's a perfect fit. We're just going to take that, slip that like that. Trim the bottom. I like this one better than the add a quarter. Trim the side of it. Do my smart corner at the top. I'll do this smart corner. And then I believe that we use the leaf ruler. And the leaf ruler fits perfect too. Bradley and I were thinking when we made those baskets and put that curve on. It's like, we should make those the same size as our rulers. And so we did. Now, the one thing I'm going to tell you right now is I didn't sew my TRP line. So I need to go back and sew. I have one TRP line on this each basket. And then there is one of the AGL lines. But I think those are marked a little bit different. I'm not sure if they use those as a sewing line or if
yes,
they mark.
Nope. So, well, you can mark them just like you could mark your TRP lines, but okay. we suggest sewing the AGL lines so that once you put that piece right up next to your grid, you don't have to worry about whether or not that's perfectly aligned or not. And remember so those are applique grid lines, and that's if you're doing the digitized embroidery option for applying the applique.
All right, so I normally do my TRP lines before I remove all the paper or before I trim, just because then I don't have to go back and cut all those threads. But now we have our TRP lines. We have 2 baskets, and so the next piece I'm going to work on is I'm going to do get you started, and we're going to do the paper piecing for the D9 pieces, right? So we're going to set these aside right here. Put this back over. So I have 4 of these pieces. We're not going to make all of them because I have a bunch of them made, and I'll just show you what we have. But I just want to go back through and do a little bit of stacking for you. So I left 4 of them to make. I have my background fabric. I have my template layout sheet, and we have all of our spikes. All right, so we're gonna look at the D9. I want to bring to your attention, there is, Bradley missed a label right here. So if you look at your unit D9, the very last section, section 17, he actually, that is actually, the template is D9-4. So you have your D9-1 here, all of these spikes are D9-3, and the last one is D9-4, okay? All of my background pieces are a D9-2, so they're all the same size. So when you actually cut these out with your template layout sheet, if you stack your templates the way they're supposed to, you'll end up with D9-4 at the very bottom, okay? Because these don't have a bunch of, they don't tell you what sections they are. It has my section 1, it's labeled as section 1, and then I have all my D's, and then the very last one is the D9-4, okay? But we don't have the section numbers on them because they can be used in different places. This one should have had a section number, but he didn't put it on there either, so. All right, so that's for section 17, okay? It's pretty easy to figure out, Bradley didn't do that right. So if you're reading all the numbers, most people don't even notice it because by the time you get to the last piece, you only have one piece left in your pile. If you're stacking. If you're not stacking, that's when you notice that stuff. All right, so now we're going to just go through and we're going to quickly cut our template layout sheet apart. There's line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6, and line 7. Okay, so something else I want to mention is every once in a while we've had a couple patterns where Bradley has forgot to put the cut lines on there. They have them, but he didn't number them, and they all stay, they'll say line 1, line 1, line 1, line 1. If you see something like that, don't worry about it. Just find the first cut and just start doing your cuts because the end result is the same. It just means he just missed it when he was going through and labeling everything, and that's easy to do when you're working on a little computer. Okay, so I'm going to take these because they don't have a section number on them. All I have to do is start with my very last piece, which is my D9-4, and then we're going to put one of these on it. And then we're going to put the template 3 and this. And yes, there's a lot of these. And it did take me almost all day to make all of my spikes for my, and it was a long day, so I broke it up into a couple afternoons, but I probably had 8 hours of sewing because you're making 12 of the D9 and you're making, or no, 16 of the D9, and then you have 8 of the D10, okay? All right, so just to go back over our paper piecing, let's just do a few steps on it. We're going to flip this over and glue the very first piece on there. And I am going to show you something. So for 20 years, I have used the Yoo-hoo stick before we started using the repositionable glue. And some people still prefer to use the Yoo-hoo because it's not once it dries, it's just dry. You can, if you're working with really light fabrics, you will notice that it dries onto the fabric, your newsprint, and sometimes it's hard to get the newsprint off of there. But when you're working with darker pieces, especially cotton fabrics, you're not going to notice that, and it does stick better than repositionable. It just doesn't come off as easy.
I like the Yoo-hoo better.
So anyway, I just take my Yoo-hoo and put it right along that edge there. And you will notice if you're working with the heavier cotton fabrics, it does stay, those pieces stay on a lot better with the Yoo-hoo. And then we just take the next one.
I really like it for super long pieces, like if you're doing foundation strip piecing, because it's such a long piece, and if those get misaligned at all, I just like it to have a better grip. But just don't forget to pull it off when before you press.
If you're doing your pressing, the best thing to do if you're using the Yoo-hoo, and you'll read it in a lot of our instructions. I even have CIs that one day called me and said, "What does this mean?" And it's like, well, before you press, don't press the first piece down. Just come in here and loosen it up, and then you press it. Because once you pull that glue away from the fabric, then it won't stick to the fabric anymore. So it was just something I figured out years ago, that if I'm using Yoo-hoo, not to press it until I pulled it away from the fabric. So the only place we're going to use the glue is on the very first piece. And then we're just going to pick these up. But they do stay on really nice if you're working with the Yoo-hoo. So it's an option there to work with. And actually it's about a third of the price as the repositionable. And it's a lot easier to find. The repositionable is not an easy glue to find.
That's what I was just going to say. Right now we have an order in for repositionable glue, and they're scheduling us out for delivery of April. So anyway. And during COVID, it was even worse. It was over a year, and you couldn't even find repositionable glue. So
okay, so we have our 4 pieces there, and I'm going to go over just a couple different tips for your gluing these on. So I like to take and stack everything and glue it on, but I have a lot of students that prefer to do the gluing as they're actually stacking. So if you're going to do that, you have to be pretty quick at it, because your glue sticks are going to dry pretty fast. Don't use your Yoo-hoo sticks for this, because you'll just get it everywhere. So I'll just take that, if you do it as you go, just run that along there, and then hold on to your glue, and then take this, and you have to push it into the glue, and then you pick up the next piece, put it on here, and just quickly run that along. Now you need to be a little careful not to get it past because you want that to stay within that seam allowance. And it does dry really fast for you, so you don't have time to set it down and mess with it too much, because it'll dry. So this is one way you can do it if you prefer to glue as you go. I like to stack the whole batch and then come back and pick them up and do the gluing. And I've done that in some of my videos as well. But you can do it both ways, all right? And remember, the reason for the glue is so when you pick these up, you have all this paper there, and trying to hold that piece into place, it's going to move on you. So the glue is really nice when you're working with larger papers, and because you don't have to worry about your pieces underneath there sliding. So now I can pick all of these up, and we're just going to quickly sew line 1 on everything. And remember, we want to start the sewing just before the dashed line. My dashed line is for line 2, or right off line 2, and I want to start sewing there. You don't need to sew a knot because you're going to be cutting that thread anyway. And because this is the very first piece, I am going to point something out. So where these join, there's a point there, and you're going to have 2 of those points matching up as you join all your pieces. So when you're sewing these, you want to sew right on the line, on line 1. If you miss all the other lines, it's still going to look great. But if you miss the line on line 1, and actually it would be line 16, then you're not going to get a match where those pieces join. So pay attention to that. Slow down at the end and make sure you get that sewn on that line. The rest of them, the points all float. They don't match up to anything. So if you're off the line a little bit, it's not a big deal. When I do my chaining, I prefer to just leave the threads attached between my pieces. It saves a lot of time not having to hit the thread cutter, but the thread cutters have a tendency to get dirty, and so the more you cut with them, the more you have to clean those threads out to make sure they continue working. So when I'm working with a lot of chain piecing, I usually just leave my threads attached. If I'm working with something, a big piece of paper, I'll actually use the thread cutter to cut between the papers, but this seems to work a lot faster for me. All right, so now we're going to take this and we're going to go to our iron, and on these pieces, since it's my very first one, I'm actually going to put the starch on it. The rest of them, I'm not going to worry about. But the very first line and the last line, I'll probably starch that, because then I know that that's going to be a really tight press on there, and it's going to make it a lot easier to match when I start sewing all of my seams together.
Cordula mentioned that she uses the Elmer's repositionable glue, and that's fine too.
The what one?
The Elmer's.
Oh, whatever they can find.
Yeah, there may be other repositionable glues. I don't know.
Some of them seem to have more residue than some of the others, so you just, once you get used to what you're working with, it's just best to stay with it rather than switching back and forth. All right, so I have a nice pressed seam on my very first seam, and now we're just going to start with line 2. We're going to place our fold template on there, and then it's just repeat, repeat, repeat until it's all done. I'm going to go ahead and trim the whole stack it over here, trim. So let's review down here at the bottom. So when I actually fold this back, I'm going to move this up just a little bit so you can see. My sew line goes past where I'm folding, so when I fold it back, Notice how I folded back the fabric with it, and then I'm just going to grab this and tear it back. And what that's going to do is it's going to tear a little hole right here in my paper. In your instructions, if you look, it's usually in the second round of paper piecing, it'll tell you to fold the paper back and then tear on that seam line. And that's basically what that little set of instructions is it's telling you that your threads are going to overlap where you have to fold. So this would have said fold back and tear the paper on seam line 1. Once you tear that, then the fabric lays flat and you can trim it off. It's in every set of instructions.
Yeah, it's on step 9 on page 5. You see a little tear there? I just pulled those.
It has a little
you should be able to see it there.
Normally.
Yeah, that's what she's showing you.
That's what yeah. And because we do floating points on the top and floating points on the bottom, that's why you have those overlaps. And so that's why you have to tear that paper there in order to get the fabric to fold back. It's because you're crossing over a seam line. All right. So I have all of these ready to go. I'm not going to show you, make you watch me paper piece this whole set, but I do want to bring to your attention a couple things, because this is a mistake that is really easy to make, and it has been made around here several times, and it has been made by my CIs. It has been made by a lot of my students, and so I want to bring your attention to this. So this is my unit 9. My dark fabrics go on the inside spikes. My background fabrics go here, okay? And so when I get started, I'm going to go grab a couple pieces off the wall over here that I have done. So this is my unit 9 that's finished, and my spikes are here, okay? My unit 10, which we're going to start here, this is my D10, and notice that my spikes are white and my background is dark. And you want that because you're going to be, this piece is flipped upside down, so you have the white, and then it comes into the spikes, and then it goes back out to the background. And so if you look here, I have spikes, and then these are my large background pieces in here, and then it goes back into the skinny. So as you switch from one unit to the other, make sure you're sewing the right colors on there, because it's not an easy thing to fix. A lot of times you just have to start over and get some new papers, because it's just not an easy thing to fit. On this one, you would not be able to switch out those pieces if you cut it wrong or if you sew it wrong, all right? So these are my 9, and I'm just going to, because I'm going to put it away, I'm going to take my paper clips, or my binder clips, and they're in this cup over here. And I'm just going to clip this right onto a bunch of those newsprint pieces, or not newsprint, but fabric pieces, so that when I come back, I'll know exactly where I'm at. And then I'm going to take the rest of these, because I have them stacked, and I'm going to put another paper clip on it, binder clip. Here's one right here, big one. All right, so we can set these back in my bag over here. Actually, we're going to put it back in this bag. and we'll come back to those. And I showed you my 9. Now I'm going to show you the 10. Okay, so normally when people make this mistake, it's because they've actually changed out, like I have light fabric here, and that's where my light is. But if you reverse your colors, which you can do it on Quiltster, and let's say this was dark and this was light, then this one would have to be dark here and this one would be the light here. So it's just, you got to pay attention to that because it happens. So now if I look at this, the very first piece that I'm starting with on this is my dark fabric, which is going to go right here. And then you're going to have the light fabric that goes in on the inside of it. All right? So don't make that mistake. And if you do, you can just cry about it and then call us and we'll get you some new papers. Because there's really nothing you can do. All right. So let's take this, put the paper clips back on there. And we're going to put this away as well because you guys don't need to watch me do any more paper piecing. We're going to set these pieces aside. All right, so here, what's going on in this bag, this is stuff you do want to see me do. So we're going to start going through these bags. And this starts on page 7, okay? And these are all your background units. So the very first piece that we're going to start with is I'm going to show you how to cut out these templates, okay? So you guys have a rectangle piece of fabric, and then you put your template on here, and then you're going to come in and sew your TRP lines. And you sew those TRP lines before you cut anything apart. Don't try to sew them after, because if you do, the paper's going to move and you're not going to know where it's at. It's so easy just to come in here and sew them, and they pull out really easy. So on this sheet, I want to show you that there is a misprint here, and it is going to be, we're going to do a correction on it. But Bradley has basically this template piece and this template piece, he's got the lettering on the wrong ones. So this one says D32, it's actually supposed to be D42. This one says D42, it's supposed to be D32. If you cut them out this way, it's just fine. If you go to put them onto your foundation papers, the units, and you try to match the D3 to the D3, you'll find that it doesn't match. So just go grab the D4 and put it in its place. Okay, he just messed up those numbers. He just didn't get them labeled on the wrong one. So basically D32 and D42, just switch them. It's a real easy fix. If you're working with batiks, you wouldn't even notice it because if you flip the batik over, it puts the TRP line in the right. But if you're working with a cotton fabric, it's going to put the TRP line where it's going to set it off, because these don't fall in the center on these pieces. All right. We'll get that listed in our corrections. So we have our leaf template here. So The two in the middle use the leaf template, and the ones on the outside use my diamond template, okay? I've sewn all the TRP lines, and so I'm just going to come in here with my diamond. And it's not a perfect match. All you have to do is just roll that ruler right along the outside edge of that. And these are going to be single cuts. All right, there's only one layer of fabric under each one of these papers. You get a paper for every layer of fabric. And then we're going to come in here. Actually, that leaf template actually fits better than the diamond one. So we're just going to cut right along there. Okay, and now I'm going to place this on the inside. And we're just going to roll the leaf ruler around. And then you're going to cut. And don't worry about whether or not it's accurately cut along the ends. It's just the excess that's going to get trimmed off. So then we're going to take this one. We're going to cut that one. I'm actually going to take it and cut it this way. Let's do the outside first. And if it's not a perfect cut on the outside, don't worry too much about it because it's all going to get trimmed off. And then I'm just going to come in here and trim right along that edge. And then we're going to take this. The inside is your sew side, so you want to be, when you cut that inside curve, you want to be right on the line with that inside. On the outside, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. All right, so we have those cut out. Right, now we're going to grab our background pieces. These are for units D3 and I believe D4. Unit D3 and D4. Okay. So these are weird. In fact, the other day when I was putting it on, I'm like, Bradley, you made them all backwards. And then I sat back and I looked at it and I went to a light table. I'm like, nope, they're perfect. Okay. So remember that this was on your right side of your fabric. And so if I take my template piece, you can tell that it fits the way it's supposed to fit. This has to go onto the back, but it looks funny the way it's set up back here. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I have fabric past my line down here. I need fabric on this side, fabric on this side, fabric on the top edge here, but it doesn't necessarily cover along the vein because that's where these pieces are sewn on. So it's not going to fit underneath the vein right there, but you just have to make sure that all your sides are on there. These are fairly big pieces, and so what I'm going to suggest that you do is grab some flower pins. Yes, you can use your repositionable, but because they're so big, it's probably going to fall off. So I usually put a couple pins in it, which I don't like pins because I always poke myself. But now I don't have to worry about it going anywhere on me. And so I have this one in place. So I'm going to get rid of that paper there. Now we're going to take the next one and I'm going to do the same thing. So it goes on there like that. I've got it lined up at the bottom. This is coming up here. I have plenty of room here. I'm going to move it a little bit because it's a little tight there. There we go. It doesn't cover all of the fabric underneath. It doesn't cover the vein. So don't worry about that. I'm going to put a little bit of repositionable glue on this one just because my paper's a little bit wrinkled. And I very seldom go to the iron. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right there. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to reinforce that with a couple pins. Okay. And then we're going to get rid of that. Now, now we're going to take these and we're going to sew the TRP lines. And I've already got some with the TRP lines sewn on it, so I'm not going to make you watch me do that. But let's just go over the TRP lines. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 TRP lines and 1 AGL line. Okay? And it's the same thing over here. I have TRP, AGL, TRP, TRP, and then the TRP at the top. Actually, I didn't show you that. You have a TRP there too. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 TRPs on that. And you need to sew them because if you want your basket handles to come out accurately, you need those TRP lines in there, right? So I'm going to set these aside because I have some already sewn. But first of all, I'm going to find the pieces that go with this. This says that I need my D32. So I'm going to find the one that I remarked as D32. And I'm going to clip it to here. And this one says D42. And this is the one that I remarked for D42. I'm going to clip that, okay? And those we'll set aside for now. Now the other thing that's in my stack here are these pieces. And this is my D2 template and a D1 template. Okay, so these pieces go with this, and those are actually the basket, the handles to my basket. So if you look on my piece right here, it's all covered up, but that's the pieces that go in there and make up for that basket handle. Here again, this template does not cover the whole thing. It's only supposed to cover this part. So this is my D1. Whoops, that's my D2 template. This is my D1 template. And I'm going to put my foundation paper on there. And don't try to make it fit the whole thing. Just get it out there so you have fabric along the edge there. And then you're going to put a little bit of repositionable glue on the back of that. Like that. It has 2 TRP lines and 1 AGL line that you're going to sew. This one's going to go on here like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and pair these up because I also have these ready to sew for you as well. So this piece is D12 and this one calls for D12, so it goes with there. And this one calls for D2. So we'll put a paper clip on there. And I'll come back and finish these later. Okay. So we're done with that. So let's start with these little pieces. Take the paper clips off. All right. So in my instructions, it tells me that I need to sew on my basting line. So I have already sewn that basting line, okay? And then it says my TRP lines, and then you got to mark that AGL line, all right? If you don't glue those on and pin them, they're probably going to slip on you. Like this one slipped and it's just barely covering the edge, but it covered, so I left it. All right, and I did the same thing here. So now I'm going to flip it over, and you guys aren't going to be able to see that basting line, but I actually do have a basting line right there, and that's what I'm going to use to put my curve up against, okay? And I have a TRP line here and a TRP line here. So I'm going to pull my paper off of this. If I'm working with batiks, once you pull the paper off, it's hard to tell which is the right and wrong side. So what I like to do is I will take a white chalk pencil if it's a dark, and I'll mark the back side with a big X, and that way I'll know that that's my back side. If you're working with a cotton fabric that has a right and wrong side to it, it's really easy to figure out. So that's my right side. You're going to take that and we're going to lay that on there, and I'm going to match one TRP line right there, and I'm going to put a pin in there, okay? And then we're going to grab my glue stick here, and I'm going to run the glue right in along that basting line, and I'm just going to pull this back and line the raw edge of my vein up with the basting line, okay? So I did that part. Now I'm going to do from this TRP line to here, right? So I'm going to grab my next TRP line and I'm going to match it up with what the one underneath. Now, if you have a fabric with a really tight weave, you may need to come in and do a little bit of clipping on this, okay? I didn't put any snippet marks on there because I didn't seem to have a problem with it. But if you have a piece that's on a really tight weave, or when you set it on your fabric, you might have it on the straight of the grain if you were short of fabric, or there's a lot of reasons why sometimes that just won't lay down like that. But you can see that this is laying down right along that basting line. Really nice there. When you're using your glue, one of the advantages of putting a pin here and a pin here is now I'm not going to run the glue over my TRP line. So when I go to pull that out, it's not glued in. So if you run the glue over your TRP line, you're basically gluing it to the fabric and it won't come out for you. So we're going to take this glue stick again and run it just to the inside of that basting line and match that up right along there. Okay, and now we're going to finish it off. We're going to do this side. And when I'm making these, I'll just sit down and do the whole stack. If I have 8 of them, if I have 20 of them, I get them all to this position before I go to my machine. So we're going to take this one and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start out with a pin, match the first 2 basting lines. Run your glue stick from that first basting line back to the edge right at the beginning, and just roll and pull the fabric back, and it'll just glue right into place for you. Okay. Then we're going to take another pin, pin the next TRP line, and again put the glue in there. So some people will ask me, well, where are you actually putting the glue? So let's flip this over. Basically, I'm putting the glue between the dashed basting line and my actual sew line. So that glue is going to fall right in the seam allowance. If you get too much glue, it'll come in and it'll show in your fabric when after you sew your seam allowance. So you just want a little bit of glue right along that line. Now let's do the last part of it. Okay, so we have 2 of those ready. Since we have to do the same thing to these pieces, let's just go ahead and get these glued on. And I already have the TRP lines and the basting line, and I should have done these in dark thread for you guys so you could see them, but I didn't. I just used my white thread. So when I take this off, that TRP line goes on there just like that. So what will happen is if you have the wrong piece, if you grab the wrong piece, if you forget to change and relabel that, your TRP line is going to be way over here, and what will happen is when you go to sew it on, it's not, because the TRP line is offset, so you have more on this side than you have on that side. And that's how you'll know that you needed to switch it, right? So I've got that pinned. Get this matched up. And you only have one TRP line on that piece. And then I'm just going to glue. And then we're going to take this one. And then we're going to set that aside like that, and we're going to do the next one. So I'm just putting the glue right along the inside of that basting line. Match the raw edges. Right. And move these out of the way so you guys can kind of see me a little bit for this next demo. So now we're going to sew these. So there's 2 ways that you can do it. You can come in here and sew right along and line your 1/4 inch foot right up along the edge of that. And for years I did it that way. And then I started going to this side because I found that when I'm working with veins, this is much more accurate sewing because I want to be right on that line. Because if you have 2 veins coming together, you want them to match. So we're going to sew right on. And it says sew line 2. Well, if I just put this down, I'm going to end up with all kinds of puckers in there, underneath there, with those ruffles. So what we do is we bring this piece over, and we're going to put our needle in the down position. So there we go. And we're going to sew on sew line 2. And I'm going to take just a couple stitches to get started here. And then what we do is we lift the paper. And so I have it lifted on this side, and I also have it lifted in front of the needle. And then I'm just going to sew. I'm going to downsize my stitch because the smaller, I'm going to go to about a 1.6 on this little machine, because the smaller my stitch, the less that foot jumps, and it's going to pull that ruffled fabric right into place underneath. And then I'm going to stay on the line. We're not going to sew over the pin. And you can kind of follow the line with your finger on the top, and you'll know if there's a little pucker in there. And if I run into a pucker, then I just reach underneath and I pull the fabric back underneath there, and it'll flatten everything in front of my needle by about 1 inch. You want to make sure you stay on that line, because if you have to match it, you want that to be able to match up perfectly. So we're going to take that piece out, and then we're going to grab the next one. And again, we're going to make a few stitches in there, and after I get those done, I'm going to pull the pin out. I'm going to pick up the basket handles here. This one's a little easier for you to see what I'm doing. So you can see the ruffle under there. And you're just going to pick it up and hold it up in the air. And as you get to the end of these basket handles, you're going to have to pull this fabric back because you can't hold that paper up anymore. So just reach underneath there and pull the fabric back on the bottom, the ruffle, and flatten that out with your finger. We have one more of those to do. Pull the pins out. So again, I'm right at the end, and it's going to want to sew a big pucker in there, so I've got to reach under there and pull back on that ruffle to flatten that. All right, so we're going to check really quick to see if I have any puckers. And I don't. And sometimes I do, and if I do, there's a couple things you can do. One is you can pick out just a couple stitches and rework it in there, or you could take and put a pin underneath the stitch and loosen that stitch up, and a lot of times you can work out those puckers if you end up with one like that. All right, so now we're going to grab our starch pin, and we're going to run the starch pin right along that stitch line, along the back. Right, now I'm just going to take my hand and I'm going to press that out first, and then all I have to do is just do a really nice press along that curve, and I have a perfect seam there. All right, now I have all these pressed, and now we're going to trim. So I'm going to grab my leaf ruler and I'm going to place it right along that outside curve. And I'm trimming right on the outside line there. I'm going to do both little ends there.
You got a question.
Okay.
She says, is the starch always put on the back of the seam?
You can do it both ways. You can put it on the back. I find it's easier on the curves to get it, put it on the back, because then I can finger press it and then go to the iron with it. That's just the way I do it. If you put it from the front side, then you basically have to iron it down, and then if you'll run it right along the inside, it'll lay that any folds that you have pressed in there. So it works from both sides. But it works really nice. You don't end up with any puckers or folds or anything in those curves, and they lay down. It's a real clean curve. All right, so now on this piece, my inside curve, this big one, I use the leaf ruler. Okay. And then I'm going to use the leaf ruler up here. I'm going to come back and cut that smart corner right there. Then I'm going to use the diamond ruler on this curve. Cut my smart corner. Use the diamond ruler on this one. And then we're going to grab my straight ruler. And my straight ruler. And then we're going to, so let's go ahead and do the straight lines. And then we're going to do the diamond ruler. We'll switch over to our leaf ruler.
I don't know if a lot of you follow the Quiltworx support network on Facebook, but it's a group and it's a good place to go if you want to connect with other quilters. And there was a question the other day, it was a question about what the leaf ruler was. Well, I think if the people that were on that discussion channel or on that discussion thread had just seen the video, they would understand why Judy likes to use the curved rulers and why she recommends them in her patterns. So they're not required. You could cut all of those lines without them, but
it's a lot easier on your wrist if you have a ruler to follow. I mean, I can cut a straight line as well. For years, I did all of my cutting without a ruler. You can work without an out-of-quarter ruler. It's just when you have the ruler there, it's easier on your hand. You're not having to put as much weight on the rotary cutter, and you're working slower, and it gives you something steady up against there. And no matter what we do with any type of curved rulers, if you have a stack of curved rulers, just get them out, because there's companies out there that do all kinds of different curved rulers, and they work the same way. Basically what you're doing is you're finding something that the radius is really close to what you're cutting, and then you can use that, and all you have to do is just rotate the ruler a little bit. I have several curved rulers. We have the one for our wedding ring, and it's the same way. We have a diamond wedding ring ruler, and if I have them all sitting there, I find myself picking them up all the time and matching up and working with my curves. So I do like the curved rulers a lot, and it's one of those things where once you get used to a tool, you find yourself using it all the time. Back in the 80s, I saw somebody use a rotary cutter, and I laughed and I said, "Why do you need one of those? I can cut with scissors." And now I use the rotary cutter all the time. So it's mostly just getting used to what type of tools you have. Okay, so we have to finish up a couple other cuts on here. And of all the questions that I get from people, the one probably the most of the time, I would say 9 out of make a mistake after they get this. When they're trimming these, they will trim all of this stuff underneath out before they trim the outside piece. Well, once you cut this apart, you don't have that trim line anymore. So you have to do all of the trimming around the perimeter of your units, and then you come back and you fold your vein back, and we cut this excess out underneath there, because you don't want to sew those extra layers of fabric into your quilt, because if it's slipping just a little bit, it's going to cause a lot of rippling in the sewing. So you have to get this part off right here. And what happens is people will go in there, they know they have to get that off, and as soon as they sew the vein on, they'll flip it back and they'll cut it off. And now they have nothing to trim the outside of the vein. And so what happens is when they're done, if I trimmed off, because we trimmed off, some of the areas we trimmed off this much. Some of them was an extra 1/8 of an inch. So if you don't have your paper underneath there and you cut that off before you do the perimeter, now you've just added an extra 1/2 inch, 1/8 of an inch, and sometimes that'll vary to that vein. And then you have a problem, because when you start sewing everything together, they don't match up. Okay, so that is a big mistake. And it's really nobody's fault, other than you just have to memorize those steps in your head and take it slow as you're learning how to do them. If you have questions, ask. But it is a big mistake, and we will help you through it if you make that. All right, so I'm gonna take this now, and I'm going to trim right along the inside line of my basting stitch, because I don't want to leave the basting stitch in there. Especially if I'm using light batiks, you'll notice that that basting stitch is in there if you don't cut that off. So I want to get rid of that stitch line. And there I have it sewn. So do all the trimming and then come back and fold back your fabrics, your vein, and cut this off.
And she mentioned that we can help you. The process for helping you fix that is to send you new newsprint. Yep. And then you need to cut out your unit. You don't have to sew anything on it. Just cut the unit out and lay it on top and use that as a cutting guide. So it will require the purchase of new newsprint. But I don't know if a lot of you are aware or not, but we sell individual papers for mistakes. So if you have to order more, it's okay. The newsprint, whether it's in the pattern or in our replacement papers or just an individual sheet that you purchase, is $2.25 for one of the big sheets. So all you have to do is just call us. It's helpful if you know what the NP numbers are, which is information that's in your patterns. And I guess if I switch real quick to the view with the pattern, I can kind of show you that. Just give me a second here. But it's on, so in your patterns on like your first pages of instructions, you'll see where it says TP 891 and NP 892. If you make a mistake, you'll need to call and order the number of sheets that you need for that. So if you have to, like she said, you switch your D10 fabrics, you're going to need to reorder those D10 sheets, which are NP 892. If you need to cut these, you'd have to just get one of the NP 893. So if the dog eats part of it, which happens, or you move and you lose half of it, or you open it up 10 years later and you don't have all the pieces anymore, we can usually help you. So don't be afraid to ask us.
On occasion we can't, but sometimes, most of the time we can. Okay, so now we're going to actually put these pieces together. So I'm showing you the back because you can kind of see where we pulled that off. So I still have paper on this group here. I'm going to leave the paper on these two pieces because it helps stabilize, and then I'm going to remove the paper from these. All right, so I have TRP lines that tell me exactly where those are going to land in there. So let's remove the paper from this one. And while we're doing this, I'm going to show you something else that does help. If you're removing the paper at a table, you can actually take and place your, oh, I missed a TRP line and I need that, so we're going to sew it really quick. You can place a fold template right up next to those TRP lines and tear along there. All right, so if I take that and I just come back like that, it tears really nicely right along that paper or that stitch line, and I don't end up with a lot of excess paper attached to it. We're going to take that, rip that off. And something else I do get asked is, and I see people, they'll sew their quilts up, they leave the papers in, And then they'll say, well, you said to leave the paper in. I don't say leave the paper in. I just say leave the paper on it until you're ready to assemble. All right. You don't want to, unless you're doing like a curved seam, you really need to get that paper off before you start sewing. It's very difficult to try to sew a quilt together when you have all of those layers of paper. You end up sewing the paper into all your seam allowance, and you can take what would take the job of removing the paper from 3 hours to 3 weeks just to get it off. And sometimes you can't get it off.
A tiny water bottle will help. Like if you spray it and get it wet, that causes the newsprint to dissolve. But it's way easier to remove it for sure.
All right, so I'm going to sew those 2 pieces. So I'm leaving the paper on this part, but realize I don't have anything underneath that vein. All that I have is right there, so I'm not sewing it in. I'm going to take that, I'm going to match my first TRP line. Okay, and then I'm going to match the second one. You don't have to guess where this piece goes, because if you sewed your TRP line, you know exactly where to fit it. And then we're going to grab our glue pin, and I'm going to glue my very first side and glue right along the tip of it, and I'm going to match it to the bottom fabric. So this is basically a traditional piecing process, but I glued, so I have a corner and then it matches right up around that corner. Now I'm going to come over to this one and I'm going to put glue at this end, and I'm going to match those smart corners on this one as well, and then work that fabric back to my pin. Now if I take this and I just kind of pull some little ruffles into it right here, it'll actually ruffle. See how I ruffled that part in there? And what it does is it lays down that center piece, and now I can put my glue right on there. And then just work that to where it's right along the edge. And now we're going to do the same thing here. So we'll set the pieces up like this, flip it over, pin the first TRP line, pin the second TRP line, glue the ends on the raw edges, match your smart corner first, and then glue the raw edges around the curve. Go to the other end, put the glue on the bottom vein, and then you're going to match the smart corner first, and then you're going to glue the raw edges. Work those together. And then you're going to take this and just ruffle this on the inside to where that lays down for you along that edge. Put the glue on there. Just pull that out, match your raw edges. Okay. And now we're going to sew. And we're just going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I want to show you a couple little tricks here. I'm going to tear a piece of paper off here. We're just going to cut some little chunks of paper. So I can actually take, and I'm going to start sewing on a piece of paper. Okay, my needle's going to stay in the down position. Now all I have to do is I'm going to lift my pressure foot, and I'm going to line my edge up. I don't have to worry about the machine, the needle pulling it down into the feed dogs right along that edge, because I have that little piece of paper under there. So I use paper as a starter fabric, and instead of attaching the threads and then sewing off the starter fabric, I just use paper, and I can sew right on the paper. I'm going to flip this around. So I didn't do a very good job of gluing that. I can take that and see how I pull that back. That just flattens it in front of my pressure foot. So that is actually a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance there. I wasn't sewing on paper, so you have to have your foot match up with that 1/4 inch, or the edge of your 1/4 inch foot, or set your machine to do a 1/4 of an inch. You're going to find that you're probably going to have to lift your foot a little bit on, because the piece that I'm sewing in here is what I call a half moon. So instead of just a 1/4 circle, you're actually sewing a half circle. And they have a tendency to pucker up a little bit more than a 1/4 circle. All right, so I have my other piece, so now all we have to do is just take that paper and tear that off, and then we're going to remove the rest of the paper before we do our pressing. Alright, so now we have our basket handles. I'm going to press, normally I would tell you to press this out so that it goes like this and like this, because that does actually reduce the bulk. But I don't have to match my basket handles. Actually, I do have to match my basket handles. So, but I'm just going to, my fabric is really light, so I'm going to press mine in. So what happens is pressing them in makes it a lot harder to match up where you have to join these two seams, right? If I press one of them, if I press them out, it makes it a lot easier to match those seams. I can also take my basket handles and I can press one of them out and the other one in, and that will even make it less bulky in there. And on my particular quilt, I would notice that pressing, but it depends on how heavy your fabric is. I'm going to actually press both of them in for this one, right? So we're going to find my starch pen, wherever I left it. I may have, oh, there it is, right there. And I'm going to have to run this one right along the seam allowance on the front side of it, because I don't have the paper on it that will hold that. And we're just going to take these. And in case you're wondering what kind of an iron I'm using, this is an antique iron that one of the guys that works for us, Doug, picked up for me. And I had it sitting on the shelf for probably 4 years, and one day Doug and I decided to see if it even worked. And it works awesome. It's one of the best little irons I've ever had. It's not a steam iron. It's just a hot pressing iron. Alright, so I got those. Alright, so now you can see the way those handles work, right? So now we have the next piece that goes onto this. Are these. And I have to show you how to make these little pieces. So these have the little legs to the basket on them, and those little legs are attached to this big piece right here. So let's set these aside, and it's the same thing. We're gonna take, and here's my fabric, and we're gonna take my foundation paper, and I'm gonna put it on there just like that, okay? And I'm going to use some repositionable glue. And press that out, and then we're going to put some flower pins in there because it will never stay on there if I don't. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing on this one, but this one I already prepared for you, so you didn't have to watch me sew TRP lines. All right. So we're going to pull those paper clips off, and I'm going to put another pin on that end. Okay. So after you get this done, you're going to come in and you're going to sew the basting line right here, a TRP, and then you have this angled TRP. That is a really important one because that lands right on the tip of, I think it lands on the tip of the basket. I know it fell right into place last night, and I loved it where that, because I don't have to worry about my baskets shifting. TRP, TRP, AGL, AGL, and AGL. So on these pieces, these AGL lines on these great big ones will be really important, because as you get all of your corners together, they're going to move on you a little bit. So having those in position is going to help you square it up as you move it on your hoops, right? So I don't need to sew that one because I already did this one. So let's go ahead and we're going to sew that little corner piece on. So this is the leg to my basket. It sits on there just like that. There's no TRP line telling you where the center is. So if you don't get it centered perfectly when you put it on, you may have to pull it off and redo it, all right? So I like to just take this and get it on there where I know, and then I just flip it over like that. And now I'm going to grab my glue stick. And I'm just going to move this down till it hits the basting line. And we're going to do the first one. The first half there. And then we're going to do the second half. Now, this is another one of those little tiny corners where you might find you have to snip this. And if you do, after you put the first one on, if it's really hard, then just go in here and snip it before removing the paper, and you just take some little tiny snips right along the inside of that curve. Okay. This fabric really didn't require me having to snip anything. So, all right, so now I'm going to take this, and again, we're going to sew along sew line 2, all right? And this is a big piece of paper, so I have to really hold it up and be a little careful where I get started. So I want to lift my needle. And I'm going to downsize my stitch length again. And after I get it in about 1/8 of an inch, then I'm going to lift that paper and turn the paper underneath the foot and follow in front. And I can grab that piece of fabric and pull it back away, and it'll flatten it for me. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to take that. We're going to grab our starch pen and run that right along the inside of that curve and press it. Now let's grab our ruler. Then we're going to trim. Pin this little piece onto here so I don't lose it. All right. So we have them all trimmed. Okay. Now we have to pull this back and cut off what's underneath it. So, and there we go. All right, so now this piece fits in here, and I think I have to have this one here. Nope, but let's see. I gotta look and see how that goes together. So I have to sew my basket piece onto here. All right. So I have to see which basket goes where. That one goes right there. Okay, and then after I get that basket sewn on, then we attach that one, and that's where our base comes in. All right, so let's hurry and pull the fabric off of this little basket. What time is it, Judy?
It is 3:02.
3:02? Okay. Great. Take this one, put that out of the way. So I'm going to match the TRP line on my basket. We're going to grab our glue pen here. Roll that around and match up that smart corner there. And put that in place. I have these two little seams. I'm just going to lift the seam and put glue under each one of those seams right there. Then we're going to glue this side. So there's a smart corner right there. So those smart corners on a curve are basically, they're square and round. So you have to find where the squared edge is, glue that part down, and then you continue around the curve. So I'm going to put a little glue under that seam to stop that one from flipping. All right, and now we're going to do a curved seam. Right, and we're going to see if I have another little piece of paper, and I don't. I threw it away. So we're going to start sewing on that piece of paper, and then what I'm gonna do is, I have a stiletto here. I want to start sewing right on that point.
Okay, show them where again.
Okay, see right here on this smart corner, I want to start sewing right on that point. Okay, have the paper under there, and when I stop sewing, I want to stop sewing on the point on both of those smart corners at the end. Right, so we're going to take this, and I'm going to line my needle right up, and I'm just inside that point like a 32nd of an inch, if even that, the width of the needle. And when I go to sew off that, my fabric's going to move on me, so I'm going to grab another piece of paper, and I'm going to slide it right underneath that point, because then I don't have to worry about the machine moving that. And we sewed right off that point. So when I open it up, I have a perfect straight line there and curved line. So we're going to take this, rip the paper off. We're going to cut those little threads at both ends. And I am going to press this one in too. Now, you guys can look at the pressing and decide which way you want to press. Read your instructions. There are pressing instructions in there. If you don't like the way I tell you to press it in your instructions, then you change your mind and do it the way you want. All we're doing is trying to give you a suggestion where we think you're going to have the least amount of bulk, but sometimes it's not, that it doesn't really happen that way. We try to get everything pressed basically counterclockwise on the back side of your quilt. And so we do the best that we can as far as mapping it out, but it's not always when you're actually sewing and you're looking at it and you're following the directions. And sometimes you'll say, well, I don't like the way they're pressing this. And that's okay. You don't have to like the instructions we give you on your pressing. You need to choose that for yourself. Okay, so I have this nice continuous curve and a nice straight line there. So if you sew this up and you don't have a nice straight line, it's because you didn't start sewing on those points where I told you to start sewing on the point, or you didn't sew off the point on those curved seams. So that's where your smart corners come in really handy. So now we're going to take this piece and we're going to assemble this one. The rest of the curved piecing that you do in for this border is pretty straightforward. And I will probably just turn the video camera on in the next couple of days and just have it on while I finish up all of the curved piecing. But these parts were the ones that I really wanted to go over with you because it can get a little confusing on how all of this goes together. So I have, remember that angled TRP line? Well, it's right here, and that angle matches the top angle of my vein right here, okay? I have a TRP line here and here, so the first one I'm going to match up is that top one. So usually you want to start with the very first TRP line and get that pinned in place. And then we're going to grab our glue, and I'm actually going to glue right along the edge and match that smart corner right there. So I have that all in place. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to match this. Now, the thing that's kind of cool about what I'm doing is I'm using pins and showing you guys. But you can actually sew from here to here, and then sew from here to the next line, and from that line to that line, and then right off the end. And you don't have to put the pins in it with the smart corners. And that's normally with the TRP lines. And that's normally the way I do that, right? So I'm going to take this one. I'm going to take that pin out. I'm going to show you how this one, when I roll it around, it falls right along that angled stitch length. And I just have to position that like that. And now I know that my baskets are always going to land in the same place on each piece. And I'm going to put a pin in place there. And then I'm going to come back here. Because I'm working with this littler machine and I don't have a table, it's going to be more accurate for me to actually do the pinning. So let's go ahead and glue this raw edge between the two pins. And then I'm going to glue this bottom smart corner. And we're going to go back from the smart corner, the end, right up back to the pin. Match that. That's going to fall in there like that. And if you cut these out accurately when you were trimming, you're going to have a perfect fit along there. Okay, so we're going to grab another couple of little pieces of paper. I'm going to start sewing on my paper. And then I'm going to start right on that point of that smart corner and start my 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to line my pressure foot up so I don't have to push the fabric all the way under. I just have to get it right under the edge of the pressure foot, and the paper pulls that through. I'm going to go up a little bit on my stitch length. Okay, so now we need to move the camera over to this wall. Can we, which one's going to be the, okay, let's turn it over to the wall while I press this. So I'm going to take this and we're going to press this out. We're going to adjust some cameras because I need you to see my wall. We're on the wall, so whenever you want. Okay. So we're gonna walk over to the wall, and basically what I did here is I made that piece for you right there. All right. So let's pull this basket off. I'm just going to pin that up. So in your instructions, you have, and I'm going to tell you what page it's on. So on page 9, there's a bunch of layouts there that give you step-by-step instructions on how you're going to assemble that, okay? It starts out with an exploded view before any curved piecing has been completed. And then you go to the next picture and it tells you which line first. And then you go to the third picture and it'll tell you the next group of curved seams to do. If you follow along up here, we've written Assembly Graphic 3, Assembly Graphic 4, 5. It'll also tell you in the written area which units you're actually sewing together. So when I'm all done with this, I'm going to have a completed piece that's going to look like this. Now, you're going to find that it's a little bit easier to fit all of the applique on the half unit, all right? But this applique gets really close in here. You might have to pull a few of those. I actually did the applique. I sewed the whole unit together, and then I just put the applique on at one time. If you don't want to work with that big of a piece, just pull off these two little pieces right here and probably pull this one off. Then you can complete the applique on this unit and on this group here. Come back, sew it up, and then all you'd have to do is put those 3 little pieces in there on your big corner. So that's one of the ways you can do that.
Vanessa says if you're doing the digitized embroidery, you need to assemble it.
She assembles it. Yes,
Yeah.
You do have to assemble it on hers. And I did assemble mine when I did it, and I believe the instructions tell you to assemble it. But if you have a smaller light table, you might find it a little bit easier to get all of the applique in position on those half units. All right. So I put these pieces on last night for you, and I'm going to actually show you how to put those on. Now, the applique fits in this area right here, but even though I'm going to put the applique on here and show you how that goes, I don't recommend doing it that way. You need to get these pieces all sewn together before you do the applique. But I want to go through the sorting of the applique, and there's not enough time to get it all sewn together for you. So we're going to take this piece that I assembled, and we're going to get my light table. So we can switch the camera back now that, where do you want it? Right here. And actually, it can just stay, this one's fine. We can leave that one over there. They don't need to see my face. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my applique sheets. Which, it's not that one. It's in the back of my, oh, it's in the back of my book over here. Yeah, I need those two. The glue that I use is called Glue Based It, Roxanne's Glue Based It. I like it a lot. I have a lot of CIs that really like the acorn glue, which it's a softer glue than the Aleene's, so, or the, not Aleene's, but the Roxanne's. So this dries a lot harder than this one. If you guys like using this, then if you have your light table set by your iron, you can actually heat set that glue as you're putting it on, and it works really well. So if you're using this, it's a heat set glue, and once you get the applique on, you can just flip the piece over and glue it, and it'll attach it to your fabric. The difference between, I find, is if I don't take this to the applique table within a couple days after I use the heat set, then my pieces start popping off on me. If I'm using this, they don't pop off on me. So it just kind of depends. This is definitely a softer glue, and it does move a little bit easier, but it works really nice. And it's clear. If you make a mistake, it's easy to pull it up and move it, and it doesn't leave glue all over your piece like the the way the Roxanne's does, all right? So I'm gonna take, and I have to find which side I'm gonna work with. And so it looks like this is the one I want. I put some repositionable glue on the back of my newsprint last night when I was working with it. And so I am actually going to grab a rotary cutter.
And I want to make a comment here really quick. This is, so if you guys have done the digitized embroidery stuff before with Vanessa Fromm's stuff, she used to give you some printouts basically of the units that you would have to take down, and in order to make it full size, you either had to print out a whole bunch of small 8.5 by 11 pieces, or you had to take that whole piece down and have it printed at like Instaprints or Staples or someplace that does some large format printing, because a lot of times you don't have them. And the last time we were there, which was when we filmed the video for this, Brad said, well, I print all those pieces out already on the newsprint. And she said, yeah, so that's why we do the AGL lines, is because you used to have to go do that to get the grid. Well, now you don't have to go down and print those out anymore, because we put the grid right on the applique sheet. So you can kind of see faintly, there's some real faint dashed lines. So then when you line your actual pieces up on that, if you're going to do the digitized embroidery, you now find those AGL lines. And I don't know, maybe you can point down a spot where an AGL line is.
I'm showing them with my finger.
But there's some match points. So then you match those on your units up to those AGL lines so that you can get a perfect fit. So that's why we added AGL lines. They're actually pretty cool. I wish we had them on some of our other patterns, because you would have to do less work to get, either, because otherwise you're printing it on little pieces and you're matching a whole bunch of points and taping it all together, or you're going down and having it done on a large printer. So that's why we did it. Hopefully, those of you who use the digitized embroidery like it.
All right, so I'm gonna put this on, and this is going to fit. I can line everything up right here. Okay, and so you can see that I still have to have that other corner piece on there. That's why I said you need to just get all of this sewn together, but at least I can go through the sorting of the flower pieces here. So the very first thing, so if you're doing this machine applique, or the way I do it, then you can take a little bit of glue. You don't want much, but you can take a little bit of glue and get this to line up along with that, because we have the outside seam allowance, and I can just put a little bit of glue on that corner to get this. Because we're working with on the machine, and it's not as important that everything be perfectly matched like it is when you're working with the digitized. So all I have to do here is just take this and put a little glue along those edges so that it doesn't move on me. So I've got two pieces lined up, and we'll glue that one. So now I can start putting my pieces down. And we're going to take this one, is going to fit right there. Actually, I think it's this one that fits here, because I have both the left and rights in here. This piece is probably that one. So I went through and sorted a bunch of this out last night. This piece must go on the other side. This one goes here, and this one is another the right side, that one goes there. This little leaf goes here. That's the center of my flower, so there's my flower. Okay, go ahead. And so I have some more pieces in here. So I'm going to place this one, matches on here like that. This piece goes here. I'm going to go, this one is here, here. And then I have another small leaf that goes here. Another small leaf that goes here. And I'm just going to look really quick and make sure I'm getting my colors to match up, which I do. This one is going to go, actually I think these are the opposites, because these pieces, so that goes over there. This goes over here. My yellow. So all of these pieces, and then I'll have to put those on. So now then this piece is going to go here. So I'm missing one piece here. Actually, that goes, nope, that's not the right one. I must not have put it in. Oh, there it is. It's that piece right there. All right. So now I have all my pieces in place, and I'm just going to grab my glue. And in the last video, I showed you that you can actually put like a piece of plastic, or you can actually put a pressing sheet between here, and then it doesn't stick to your newsprint. When you're doing a lot of it, it's just easier to have that available. And when I put this glue on, remember, you're not going to put it right along the outside edge. You want to set it inside, away from the edge just a little bit. And it doesn't hurt just to go right down the middle with these stems. They're so small. That's the other nice thing about the digitized is the little tiny stems and the little circles are all digitized, so you don't have to make all of those. All you do is make the flowers and the big leaves. Stems, the big stems, you're right. And then the great big leaves, you do. All right. So I'm not going to put on that other stem because it has to go, I have to do complete that seam first. I normally don't put these little tiny circles on my flowers. I usually will stitch those down and then pop the circles on, because then all my stitches start underneath that circle. All right, so we have that portion of it done, and then we're going to we'll set these aside. we have this one goes here, that one goes there, and then there's a long one that goes right here, and then we have a flower that goes here, and then this is the stem that I said you would leave off, or the leaf that you would leave off, and then we have a leaf, and underneath that, that's actually the right color. And then at the bottom I have this one. I have a little circle here. And then my petal, or my tulips, go up there. So we can glue on what fits. All right. So I just wanted to show you guys the process of putting those baskets, flowers in place today. But like I said, you want to get all of this border sewn together before you actually start doing this. If you have a really small light table, you can put some of it in place, but then you have to deal with them maybe popping off if you start sewing them up. So there's pluses and minuses to what we did here, but you can see how you're going to fit up those edges along the edges of that design. And that's basically how we get our applique on. And then once I get all the applique on, I just sit down and I start sewing it together. But I will actually join my two corner pieces before I sit down to the machine and start sewing the applique. All right? So I think what I'm going to do is have the video turned on, and I'm going to do the curve piecing and for all of the sections, and just go through and follow the instructions and take a picture of the pieces as we do it, and you guys can go through and watch that video. It'll be a long video, but you don't have to watch the whole thing. We can turn it on and then you can just speed through it from one piece to the other. The dog just came back in. So I think that we're going to finish up the demo, or the today's video, right at this point, and for you guys. And then next week we're going to go through joining all of those pieces. So next week's video probably is not going to be that long of a video. If you guys have questions, please write down some questions and we can go through those next week and when we finish the last one. All right? Do you have any other comments, Judy?
I don't think so. I think that's good.
we will get those corrections added out onto our website, so that, and we'll put the information out there so you guys can find the corrections. And so I think we're done for the day. What time is it?
It is 3:36.
Oh, we're early.
We did good. Yeah. Especially with all the little extras we did at the beginning. So
Yeah.
we're very, very close to having it done. So I hope, if you guys are posting, or if you guys are finishing yours, definitely share some pictures, especially at the Quiltworx Support Network. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, I think.
Yep, next Wednesday.
Okay, next Wednesday. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.